Hello and welcome to the third video in this series where I just make long form tutorial videos over Hytale world generation. In this video I hope to go over more of the first video in the series and to go a lot more in depth with a lot of the topics that I have previously, as both myself and Hytale have evolved and learned over the past few months, especially with the recent mod jam that happened. So I encourage you watching the first one if you haven't already, as we'll be building off of those topics. But as always, this video will come with chapters, so skip around, come back, or do whatever you want, but for me, it is time to begin. Alright, so this is actually in the new pre-release, by the way. It is update 5 if you're in the future. So the first thing in this new update is, yes, we have a new command, WorldGenV2 create. Oh wow, I haven't actually seen this many yet, but you can see here this is a very good starting base than what we were doing before, which was copying and pasting and copying things over. But right here you can start with just one biome, my biome, pack name. Sure, I'll call it tutorial 3 as well. Why not? Not tutorial 2, tutorial 3. The group is me, or the pack group. Yes, basic is always a good one to start off with. We were messing with that last time, as well as the world structure template. Let's just leave it as that. You also notice that you can now do whatever commands you want in creative if you load it up in creative instead of having to do op self as before. If you're starting off in a survival world, you will have to do that command, as you can see here. And I believe it has also already started us off with a viewport, which is great to be able to see our changes. So let me see what it looks like in the asset editor. We should be able to see our new pack that it's created in here. Yep, right here. Cool. And if I go into the Hytale generator, we will have everything that we had before. I think one of the things that has changed is that the framework is new. It used to be, I think, constants or something like that, but now that's moved into decimal constants. And this will define the same things as whatever you want in your biome. So for example, you can set the base of the terrain, the water level of the terrain, as well as where the bedrock spawns. Just kind of useful, just kind of variables that you could use throughout your biomes. And going with that, if you have any useful positions that you'd like to use throughout your biomes, you can also put it here. The use for in this one is actually for spawn points, which we'll get to at some point. So you can see export as spawns, name spawns, and then it's linked up back to here. But yes, we'll go into that later, but you can also, again, use this throughout. But anyways, let me open up the new asset node editor. I say new, I guess it's not that new. Oh, I'm just in the middle of nowhere here. Let me go into my saves here. Tutorial 3, mods, here it is, tutorial 3. Instances, not instances, Hytale generator, biomes, my biome. Loading it up here, we have pretty much the same that we had before, except we have a random 2D over there. But yes, so I'm going to start off with just nothing and then kind of just go over one more time how the density works, just as a re-explainer in case I explained it a little bit weird the last time, especially now that I've been experimenting around with it more. So hopefully this is able to clear some more things up. So starting off with just a simplex noise 2D here, you already know what it looks like. It's this weird amalgamation here. You can see this is how simplex noise looks. It's just a range of values going from -1 to 1 that kind of have that effect. If it's below 0, then it's empty air. If it's above 0, then it's solid ground here. And I'm specifically going over this because I like doing a specific setup whenever I start creating a world, and this is just kind of a good explanation as to why I like that setup. So starting off with just the base height here, you already know how this works. At the base that is defined in the constants here, which is 100, there it is, it'll be 0, and then going down it'll be 99, or sorry, it'll start at 0, at 100, and it'll go to -1, -2, -3. Starting at the y100, you can also, of course, always just do this, which will get the same exact effect, except it's not a variable that you can control there. But yeah, so let me just load this up, and you can see again that everything below 100 will go down because we're going down the Y value. So 0, -1, -2. If you hit F7, you can see we are at 101 whenever the blocks start. But of course, we don't want a world that kind of looks upside down, so let me invert this to where now, as we go up in the Y levels, we then decrease in the density levels, I guess you could say. So now here it is 99 where it starts because it's still 0. But this is how I like starting. It's a very flat base, and then if I want to, let's say, change some things about it, again with this Simplex Noise 2D here, I can plug this in, and then everywhere that it's 0, it's now +1, and then which then forms ground, and whatever it's -1, it'll then go into the ground. And so then from that you can then reason that if you then just multiply it with a constant 10, for example, let me see, there we go, and then if we multiply by 10, then I'm essentially just moving up and down those Y values that was generated from the base height, and I don't know, I kind of much prefer this way of doing it than necessarily the way that Hytale does it, where they specifically do a curve mapper on the base height density. I think this just makes the math just kind of work out a lot better for me, and I can think it through a lot better as I'm just kind of doing an offset onto just a common plane that you have from here. But now let's do something interesting now that I kind of got that out of the way. And let's use a curve mapper. Let's make this look a little bit more interesting by applying a distance S curve. So I have it set up here. And we have the distance S curve. Now if you check the documentation, which I don't have open, oh no, I do have open. Check the documentation for curves, distance S, you can see that it goes from the 0 to the whatever the range is set to. I'm just gonna set the range to 1 because I don't know, I just like putting it like that. And then essentially I need to have an input going from 0 to 1, so I'm just going to map this density then to 0 and 1 to then map this correctly. But now we get into the problem that the output is then from 0 to 1. So this is why I set up the multiplier and the sum curve. You can also probably do the same thing with just densities as well. You can do a multiplier with a constant and do it the same way there. I just kind of like putting it all into the orange here because it's, I don't know, I feel like it's more of a curve than a kind of a density at that point. But let's do the same thing of multiplying by 10, and then I just want to move it back down to then be based off of, or I guess to do it based off of 10, I would actually do it like this. So then it's goes from -10 to 10. And if I do this, it should actually just look the same. Actually, maybe flipped. It does flip it. It's a weird thing that that curves do. But yeah, it is generally the same, and what I want to do is just make it kind of look a little bit smoother, or just kind of change the curve a little bit to have a little bit more flat parts in sections. So yeah, you can see flat part a little bit steeper, and then flat part at the top and bottom. And so yeah, that's just kind of how I like doing that. It is just kind of the method that I like. But if we wanted to do something a little bit more interesting that I kind of learned from Minecraft, from digging in the Minecraft source code, is making unique terrain. Now I'm thinking of how I create this. I think I'm gonna do yeah, okay, I'm gonna put a normalizer here just to act as my multiplier, and then I'm gonna mix between three different curves here, or three different noises here, and I think, yeah, I can just plug these straight in. I'm gonna name it, or I'm gonna put the scale to 200. This one's probably fine as that. I'm gonna do different seeds to make sure that they're all very different. This one didn't do 200. Let me do that, and then let me do a little bit of a normalizer. And again, how the mix node works, anything that is at or below 0, only this function will run. or only this density will be evaluated. If it's at 1 or above, only this density will be evaluated, and then if it's between, it'll essentially just do a mix between the two. So I actually want to do something quite interesting here, and then let me do this where I'm gonna mix between two densities using another density. So this should be what I want to create, again going from 0 to 1, and then right in between, in the middle of this density, we can do a little interpolating, but at the minimum of this density, we'll have this density, and then at the maximum of this density will run, but we want to see this at a larger scale than just moving it up and down by 1 block. Instead, we want to move it up and down by 10 blocks, and bam, we get some interesting terrain. That's sort of based off of how Minecraft does it. Where we have these sort of little ridges here. It does kind of look a little bit off, and I do want to change it a little bit. I think what I want to change is the scale of these two here to make it look a little bit more interesting. Perfect. Yeah, that's looking a lot better. Maybe I also, maybe I just scaled the whole thing down actually to 100. It doesn't want to input my first number, 100, and then yeah, I'll do half of that value, 100, 150, to make it look, yes, this interesting. I think this is good. I think this is a good starting point for what I want. It is a little bit extreme, so I'm gonna actually tame that down a bit for what I want to do. So I'm just gonna do this, and I'll only shift the blocks up by 5 in either direction. And this is already looking pretty good, some pretty good unique terrain. Let me look at my to-do list of the next thing I want to do. Yes, okay. Next thing I want to do is to make these into islands. Right, and I know exactly how I'm going to do that. So, unfortunately, how to create islands, that's more of a 3D feature. You can't really, like, I mean, you can sort of just cut out a section and then have it be just all the way down to the void in these sections, but I am just going to start off with making it a sort of the technique to make it 3D to begin with, because we are going to do some more stuff with it. For example, carve out underneath the islands that we create, which will need to be 3D. Alright, so to start off, we're going to have this position cell noise to kind of create the islands. We want the islands to be probably maybe 10 radius, so it'd be 20 blocks in length. The positions, this is just kind of the standard for what you want to do to be able to create these, is this format right here, where you have whatever positions you want, either triangular or square. So triangular grid or square grid. You have the jitter, which is just kind of the movement of the points. For this beginning part here, I'd recommend it being between 0 and 0.5 if you have it after your scalar, because this is every like 1 block. So I'm actually gonna change it to be every 50 blocks we'll have a point. But if we have our jitter 2D after that, then this will be based off of how many blocks you want to move. But if I'm just doing it before, I recommend doing between 0 and 0.5, depending on how off target you want it to be, or I guess kind of how jittered you want it to be. For distance, you know, we typically go with Euclidean. This drop down system is so cool. And then we are gonna do the distance return type, just to kind of have a cylinder that we have here. And the reason why I attached it to min, by the way, will be explained in a second, but let me first, oh right, I need to do a few things. So let me first detach it there. Let me also move these positions to be specifically at the height that we want it to be. Actually, I think there's a base height operation. Yes, perfect. So if I set this to base, then these positions will be at the 50 point. Typically, I would recommend putting a Y override to make this 2D, but I do want to actually do a 3D operation here, so I'm just gonna instead make the positions be at that point. which will actually create something a little bit interesting here. And if we go into here, yes, we can see that we do have our positions as set out that we want, and I do actually want to have the max distance to be probably twice as much, to make it a little bit larger here. And you know, as I said before, if we get the wrong thing of solid and air, then we just need to apply an inverter. So let me apply the inverter here, and there we go. And now we should see basically the opposite. Cool. Where we have the spheres and then the air. Another thing that I want to do, now that we're kind of grouping, or now that we're kind of making a bigger node graph, is to document. You always want to document. So right here is just the kind of the base terrain that we set off to begin with. So I'm going to set that to be that. And then this one is the sort of the island noise that we want, but we aren't done with it yet, so I'm just going to not group it up yet. Now I'm going to explain sort of how you deal with 3D terrain. You'll want to either use min or max. You can think of these as either a combination of two solid groups together or combination of two airs together. So in this case, I want to group up both of the airs together. So I want to take the first mapping of the world generation that we have and then just kind of cut into it and create a flat shape on top. So because of that, we'll be using min to do that kind of carving. Max will be for kind of building up from. And perfect. So we have this here. What I want to do, because you can't really see much of it, is just, again, increase this max distance for this, so we can hopefully see it a decent amount better. And then, yeah, I think we're gonna do 30 and then space it out a little bit more. So if that's 30, I'm gonna make this 60, so then hopefully they won't intersect as much as they do right now. I'm going back to 40. This is a lot of world gen, is just going back and forth, which is why it is so great that we have the feature of instantly reloading this stuff. So yeah, this is sort of what I wanted. You can see that another way that you could have done it is with the Y override, if you want to kind of create your own sort of bottom to it and not have it sort of be spherical like that. If I apply Y override, then it all actually disappears because of this base height here being at 100. So I need to also do the Y override at 100. Perfect. And then with this, you can do a little bit more modifications to the bottom. But the reason why I'm doing it like this is because I want to actually put just random shapes to be sort of what cut out here. So I want to just cut off this as I'm testing this thing, and I want to do a density return type. So with this density return type, I can then have a density that is most importantly anchored to where whatever I put after this will consider the center of the point being like 0, 0, 0, being the origin. So if I go in and I say let's do a cylinder density, and I do a few curves here. Alright, I set it all up here. I believe actually for the axial curve I need one more, as it is defined all the way through the y-axis. So I want to probably have it at like 30 and then going, oh whoops, let me do the correct way, -30 to then 30. And then in the center here, I want it to be solid. On the outers, I want it to be air, so I set it to 0. For the radial curve, I want it to go from solid to then empty at about like probably 20 blocks in radius. And then the y-axis, I just have that. And then I need to make sure I do one more thing, which is just assign a constant. And so then this will always pretty much be that value. And as you can see, it does not work. And that is because of... Let me first actually see if this just works at 0, 0, 0 by doing this. Just essentially isolating things, seeing what is working, what is not. Okay, yeah, so it is creating the cylinder that I want it to. Oh, I will need to get rid of the inverter now, because it is now returning this instead of the other one. So let us see if this has fixed it then. Let me run it and see. Yep, there we go. I just had to reverse the invert here. So perfect. Now we have our cylinders, and I'm just gonna up the max distance to 100 because I'm gonna be rotating these. So I'm just gonna rotate it just slightly like this. I think the cylinders may be a little bit too big actually, and are not being rotated. Oh, they are being rotated. It just took a little while. And then if I then, actually I kind of do like that size. Let me then reattach it to here, see how it looks. Let me just carve into these cylinders again. And that is sort of the effect that I wanted to go for actually. And so then I want to add just another one here. So let me do this to kind of go in between two different values. So let me do this and then have another delimiter that goes from 0 to 1, and then anchor that with a different thing here. Let me move all this, it's all colliding. Move this up, move this up. Let me, instead of a cylinder, I don't know why I copied all that then. Let me instead do a sphere, or not a sphere, I think it's called, I could do a cuboid, or what was it? There was a ellipsoid? Is that? Yes, ellipsoid density. There's also shell density. I'm just kind of going through them. So let me define this. So on the inside, I want it to be solid, and then at about, I guess, kind of the same 20 block radius, I want it to be empty. The scale, I want it to be probably a little bit ellipsoid towards the Y direction, and then the Y direction will be offset in a different direction. Let's just say here, I'm gonna actually move this down a little bit, or not have it as slanted by doing that. And then this should work to kind of go between ellipsoids and cylinders. And you can see it is sort of doing that. Except it's kind of going in between them. But apparently this isn't how it's supposed to work based off of the description here. Density also sought the density value of each cell sampled from this field at the cell's core position point. Instead it's sampled per block point. So it's creating this weird thing, but I guess it does give me a chance to do another thing with the position cell noise, which is to do the cell value. So let me essentially just copy everything here, do this, let me do this as the island points, and then I can then import them like so as the island points, and then the return type will be cell value, which is what this is supposed to do. This choice density is supposed to be like a cell value to where it only returns one constant value throughout the whole cell instead of being a mix of each one of these. So yeah, let me do this, and then now we should see kind of what I wanted to see in the beginning, which is a mix between, yes, a mix between the ellipsoids and the cylinders. Perfect. So, you know, a little fix to a little problem. But, you know, get to learn more. And also something I can do with this is probably put it to Manhattan, which is a little bit faster to calculate. Again, the reason why I can do that is because, you know, there's where the distinguishing thing is, it's not going to really affect it at all. For the base one, you typically want to use Euclidean, but then for anything where you're like changing the height value per island, or, you know, doing the cell value per island, you can do a lot more of just the Manhattan to just kind of be a little bit more efficient at that. But anyways, we have our little ions here, so now it is time to, well, for one, group this into little groups here. So this is the Island points, it's always important to do documentation. Island points is here, and then down here this is simply the island shapes, which you can add different things like that, and also is kind of how you can do like points of interest in your world generation, for example. So you could do a combination of like a cylinder with like a sphere that's kind of cut in half to make like procedural mushrooms, or you can do a lot of other stuff. You can see actually this is the problem with Manhattan. Sometimes you get artifacts like this, but I think I'll just leave that for now. It's not too big of an issue because we want to move on to the next point. But let me continue on forth to the materials. I'm not going to do, you know, too much complicated, because there's, I mean, it is pretty much kind of rinse and repeat for a lot of the materials here. But I am going to first do a horizontal. You always kind of want to start off with the horizontal. I want to do essentially just put grass on the top of these here. So the top and bottom of it, I believe, is between -10 and 10. Or no, it's between -5 and 5 based off of the base point here. So let me do base and base. The bottom is -5, top is 5, and then I want to do space and depth. This is important just to not do too many calculations throughout the world. It basically limits the calculations to the 10 block radius, or the 10 block height. And then here, this is useful to then have specific layers. So I want to have a constant thickness, but for this first thickness I want to do constant of just grass. Material, I forgot what the grass is called, or not what grass is called, but what grass I would want. Yeah, soil underscore grass. Cool. Soil underscore grass, and then below that I want to do dirt. So it's probably just soil underscore dirt or something like that. I can try it out and see. If I do this, then you should see. Nice. We have our grass and dirt. I do also recommend checking if any time that your world generation is running slow, that you don't have grass under grass, because if I set this, then the world generation slows down for some reason. I think it's just because there's a block on top and it needs to do an update at some point, and so it just really slows down the world generation. But it wasn't too slow there, but I guess that's just because, you know, we haven't done too much stuff yet. But just something to keep in mind on in case anything's running smooth or running slow as soon as you've started doing stuff with the world generation. You can actually see it is slow right now as all the grass is changing into dirt. There we go. Now the world's reloaded. But something that I do want to also modify here is I don't want grass and dirt being in these sections here. I just I don't like it. I don't think it looks good. So how do we do that? Well, starting here, I want to specifically just kind of not select those parts of the world generation, and I can do that based off of the previous density, all the previous density that I have up here. And the reason why I'm doing it here is because these calculations are a lot faster and it cuts out a lot more of the world that then won't cost as much to then do a density check on these areas. So let me do a field function based off of a specific density that we're going to import. Import density, let's do mat top layer, just so we know, and then delimiter, as long as it's, you know, within that range. I think we probably want to do, you know, you could probably do like 0 to 100 just to kind of do anything that's solid, but what you could also do is you could do like 0 to 2, and then you actually don't even need this part because this would only be selecting the top 2 blocks that go down into the world, which is again another nice thing of doing the technique of like shifting this base height density up and down. But I want to again do the space and depth. Unfortunately, I do have to call the same function again, just because I do want to split it up between grass and dirt. Max expected layers 2, depth in the floor, that's all good, that's all good. And this is not going to work because I haven't assigned anything for that density. And in fact, it just loads everything anyways. Oh, probably because it's just 0, because it doesn't have anything. So I'm going to copy this, it's going to be matte top layer, and I want to actually call it from here. So this right here is what I want to export. So export a density, and then I want to apply a cache to it, just so it doesn't have to do the calculation again. Instead it only does it once, and then it can just, you know, call the memory and then get the stuff back. And it's recommended to do this here, export a density with single instance and then cache, so then it shares the same cache. I didn't realize this for the longest time until people were talking about it recently. I realized, oh, I need to have this set a single instance, or else I'm just creating a new cache per every export that I have. Instead, now this will all call the same cache. But yes, so it's only specifically in this solid area that I have for this terrain that I want to be called. So if we load it up here, we can see, bam, now we have selected the grass and dirt to only be on these layers, and then as soon as it gets to the other density here, it stops, which is exactly what we wanted. Perfect. Alright, so the next thing that we will want to do is add in some prefabs, some grass, some trees. So the best way to do this is to go into these modding tools here, and then go into the paste tool. This paste tool is incredibly useful, as if you hit E, you can see all of the stuff here, and yes, and now I have the preview here. So we're specifically looking for trees. Grass we can do quite easily. And I'm probably just gonna want to spawn some like common oak trees, just, you know, going back to my Minecraft roots. Actually, there was oak moss, which sounds quite interesting. Oak moss, stage 4. Those are a little bit big, so maybe I am just gonna go for oak. And I'm gonna look for oak, probably like stage 1 and stage 2. If I look at stage 1, yeah, that's looking pretty good. I look at stage 2. I think those will also be pretty good, and so now we have what we want. And I can also, of course, always look at this a lot better if I place it into the world as well. You know, place some things manually just to kind of see, and that looks pretty good. So, and then I'm gonna go into here and start off with our prop. Alright, so what I like to do with this is typically go with an assign and then go to an assignment here. However, in this new pre-release, we do now have the props for our node editor, so you'd probably actually want to do a constant one instead, as it'll be just kind of a lot more compact in terms of everything. And then in here, you can just then import the prop file that we would have in the prop assets folder. But I'm actually just going to do everything in the one file, just because it's not going to be that big, and I want to be able to look around and not have to flip through multiple things here. So for here, I want to actually first start off with, let's first start off with grass. So grass, again, I'm going to do the same sort of setup as what I had before with the positions. This will be 2D, and then have a, probably triangular, just to kind of break it up a little bit. Have 0.3, and then probably split it up a little bit to like 1.5, something like that. I'm just gonna place one prop for now, or I want to do a locator first. I probably just want to try it out with one grass for now, but you of course can split it up into multiple different grasses here. So to do that, you would just do a manual prop, which will just place one singular block, or multiple if you so desire. So this one block will be some type of grass, and I recommend also, of course, as always, looking into example files to see what they've placed for their grass or things like that, especially since they're already very much themed, and do use these things here. So here we go. Let's do tall, lush grass plant. So that's plant, grass, lush, tall. Plant grass lush tall. Plant grass lush tall. I do wish we could copy and paste some of these names so we don't have to like remember or go through that whole process. But anyways, this main thing, if I just connected it up like this, these will spawn at position 0 in the world, or sorry, Y position 0 in the world. So if I do this, it's just gonna all spawn down here, theoretically. If not, oh, it just kind of all broke. Yeah, that makes sense. Oh, here you go. Yeah, you can see it's all pretty much just gonna break if it's down here. But it is down there, but we want it to be in our specific location. So in order to do that, we want to scan our world, and we want to specifically scan our world starting from the Y position. So for each of these, it's all in its own little column, and I just want it to move each column up, again, between the same values that we had before. And something that I do actually recommend is doing the same thing that I did up there, which is with the base height. Where is it? Here it is. The base height here, I need to make sure that I remove this export as, or else there'll be problems. And the reason why I'm doing this is so then if you create like a prop like I'm doing here for grass, but you have a biome that's like a little bit taller or something like that, and you don't want to have to recreate the prop just to recreate another range, you can instead offset the position to begin with, and then since this is always like relative to these positions, then this I can just set to like -5 and 5, and it can scan between 95 and 105, or if I'm doing another biome that's at like 200, and I essentially assign that base height here, then I can then import the same prop and it'll do the same thing. So the scanner is pretty much done. I want to scan at that block at each Y position between -5 and 5 relative to this base height here. So now that we're scanning at all the positions, we then want to basically check our patterns, check the world, check the blocks, and see if the blocks correspond to what we want. So for grass, for a lot of stuff, we'll want to do a floor pattern. I mean, this just can make sense. At the origin, we want it to spawn within air. We don't want it to spawn in blocks. That makes sense. On the floor, then we could do a couple of things. We can either check to make sure that the block it is spawning on is still grass, so I just copy this here and then attach this down here to make sure that it's spawning on grass. But another thing that you can actually do to check that it's on any floor, regardless of anything like that, is to just say if it's not empty, so if it's just a solid block pretty much, then to place it. So if I do this, we will see that our grass will now be at our correct position, hopefully. Yes, perfect. It's not spawning at our correct position, but as you can see, now it's just any position. So, you know what, I should probably have still grass for this specifically. And our grass is a little bit dense, just everywhere, and you know that's not necessarily what you always want. So I'm gonna do the classic old occurrence that we always like using. So I'm going to use another position node, which is occurrence. That's also another thing that's new. You can hover over to see a little description of what each one does. But you can use occurrence, or you can use field function. Both relatively do the same thing, but I'm going to use occurrence in this instance just to kind of show that like I can have half of them spawn essentially by doing this. So if I do this and reload, you'll see that we will have half of the grass, hopefully. Yep, there we go, half of the grass. But what I specifically want is to remap a simplex noise 2D. Let me do, let's do 100, and I want to remap the -1 to 1 to, let's say, 0 to 1, or maybe I kind of do want, yeah, let's do 0 to 0.5, or not 0.5, let's do 0 to 2. So then if it's above 1, it'll pretty much always spawn, or maybe 1.5. just feeling the creative flow of what I want here. So if I do this, now we should see much more like patches of grass. Oh, and also moss worms that spawn. Which you can kind of see, but not entirely. I think just because it's set to 0, so let me actually set this to -0.5. It's hard to see the empty patches, especially since we have empty patches of land as well. So let me set it to -0.5, see if this helps our visualization. And I think so. You can see that this is a little bit less dense here, comparative to, yeah, you can see that like nothing's spawning here, and then you get gradually more, and then you get kind of empty areas. Unfortunately, a lot of the empty areas are just kind of ending up in these pits, so you can't see it. But this is kind of a way to break up kind of consistent terrain like this. Let's do that. And also you can see that maybe we do have a problem with if the terrain is too high, and that we may want to increase our range that we look at it just by 1, just to make sure, because we are checking the block above the density instead of being at the density, and so because of that it's probably just skipping out on this top block here. So let me update that and see the results. Another thing that we could do, as I was kind of saying before, with the positions here, instead of using occurrence, we could also use the field function, and with the field function, we could just specifically designate, like, hey, if it's within this air gap here, don't spawn a position, meaning don't check the blocks to see if you can spawn a grass block or not. Just a little bit of a little optimization that could be done here, but overall, we are looking good. So now we want to spawn those trees, which I've already forgotten what they're called, so let me open it up here. That was trees, oak, and then we want to do stage 1 and stage 2, so I'm just going to leave it open like that. Alright, so now we're pretty much just going to do the same thing, so I'm just going to copy and paste, and this should also be grouped. Again, you got to be good on your documentation. This is grass, just to make sure that you know where everything is, because if you get a lot of nodes it can be a little bit complicated. Especially if you're working on a team, it is very recommended. So now down here, I want to, of course, space them out a lot more, probably 10 blocks or so. I think 0.3 is a good thing as well. Base, I don't want to do occurrence because I don't think many trees will be able to spawn because of all the gaps that we have in the terrain. I don't want as many trees as possible. So we have all this here, all of this will stay the same, it is detecting the same stuff. Something that we could do is do a surface pattern, just to make sure that, it has enough surface area to spawn, and it's not like, for example, spawning on the edge here and having its roots go over, but I think the trees that we've selected, as you can see here, they probably won't have that problem too much. This is kind of a little bit weird, maybe I do want to check for that, but in general, I don't think it's anything to check for, especially since it raises the performance cost to do a lot more checks like that. So let me change this out for a prefab instead of a block. So here I want to do weighted path for, oh no, I closed it. So you can see in the top left here, tree/oak. I could just leave it like this and it would spawn any oak tree, but some of them are quite large, so I'm just gonna do specifically stage 1, and then also stage 2, and then I just want to make the stage 1s a little bit more common, just because they're smaller trees, and I feel like that would make sense. So now you can see we have a little forest growing here. Oh, doesn't this look so nice? Alright, so the next thing I actually want to do is spawn in some structures. Now I have made a structure before, which I'm just gonna pretty much just copy and paste over for now. So in my user data in mods for Wormhole Ascent, which is a new mod that I have, I definitely recommend you should try it out. Little plug that I have there. I can go into prefabs. I think I want modified. Yes, I want this one. And then I want to go into, I want to go all the way back to the other one, not scenes, saves, and tutorial 3, mods, this mod, server, and then yeah, I could just place it in here. Oh, whoops, let me put it into the prefab folder. Prefab, and put this in here. Maybe prefabs, now that I think about it. Does it load if I do the correct thing? So you can click prefab editor. I like doing the demo and then hitting browse, and then apparently it's not here, so let me name it prefabs, and then let me do the process again. Browse, yes, tutorial 3, you can see now you have things here. I believe you can also do prefab list load save. You can or I guess you can save a new prefab using the tools, like for example the selection tool. With the selection tool you can click one spot, click the other spot, and then click the third point, and then through here you can do that prefab save feature, and you can save a new prefab that way, or you can just, you know, copy and paste like I did. But I want to look at it and talk a little bit about it. So let me open up the prefab editor again. Whoops, I want to do this, browse tutorial 3, and then I want to load them all actually. So let me just don't click that one, just click this one, and then confirm, click load. It's gonna load all 4 into the world as shown here. And I do have a custom block, but you can ignore that for now. That was for something specific. But these are the prefabs that I have created, and that I want to show a couple things for. Number 1 is that you can see the prefabs quite large, and that is simply because of this huge base that I have here. Originally, the prefab just consisted of this stone layer that I have here, but it ended up needing to be expanded just for a lot of the rocky terrain that I had in my world. A lot of times what you want to do for prefabs is create sort of a foundation. You can do this by either like extending down the base, like I could just have brick blocks running all the way down, and then just kind of having it blend into whatever land it's in, or I could just kind of build up the terrain like this, which is what I did. And then yeah, that's sort of the design process I had with these. I guess kind of not much else to talk about besides sort of what you can do with a lot of these tools. So for example, for here, you can click it, make sure to open up, I think, what is it, L? For the legend here, that'll tell you how to do a lot of the stuff. If you click on one, you can select it and then be able to save just that one by then hitting E, and then you'll be able to save it. You can also change the bounds of it by having the selection tool and then modifying that same selection that you had before whenever you saved the new one. And then if you go here, if I hit, what is it, B, I think it's B and Shift B. Oh wait, no, it's R now. Update the, yes, okay, so if I hit R, update the bounding box for prefab to the current selection. So now the bounding box of prefab is here. And if I, yes, and then I hit Shift R on a block like, oh, not Shift E, Shift R, I can move the anchor block, which this is the position of where the starting point of where the prefab will be. So from here it would then spawn this and spawn that. But there are 2 other things that I have here. One is this spawn marker that I have here that's able to spawn entities within a prefab, and then I also have these block spawners here. And if I open up the menu here and go here, you can see block spawner. You can place block spawners, and then if I type in /block spawner and I do get, then I can see the block spawner is set to ancient encounter wood, which isn't set in our asset editor here, but we can. If we go to item, block, and then we go to block spawner table, right here we can create a new one based off of, not any of that, based off of, let's go with zone 1 Torque tier 1. And this was called, what was it, Ancient Encounter Wood. I'm just gonna name it the same. You can also, of course, change this by using the block spawner set command, but I'm just gonna name it the same for now. And in here you set whatever the block is supposed to be. So, you know, oftentimes it's gonna be a chest. You can set what type of chest it is, and then in the components you want to set the item container block, and this is a drop list. So this is Zone 1 Chork Tier 1. So then if I go into the item drop list here, yeah, let me create a new item drop list based off of, let's see, let's do, yeah, prefabs, and then let's do, yeah, let's do Tier 2 instead, for example. Oh, let's call it, new drops with an underscore. This will be where you can set what spawns in the containers, and this is relatively kind of simple to understand once you kind of go through it. You have a few types here of different kind of randomizations of you can have of what loot is spawns within the certain sections. So for example, this one here, it'll spawn both 0 and 1. 1 being another drop list actually, so it'll spawn everything in there plus everything that we have in here, which this is a choice, so it makes either 1 to 2, it either adds 1 or 2 of whatever items are in here. So these are all probably single, yep, with a weight of 1, so that determines kind of the rarity of it, of what you can have in here. So armored chork hands versus armored chork chest, it's a weight of 1. So you'll have between 1 and 2 of whatever you have in here. And so that's kind of a quick rundown of where'd my block go? Yes, I want to do new drop list, please. Whoops, not in here. I want to go here, new drops, perfect. And so then it's all hooked up now. And so now if I spawn this into the world later, we should have our chork chest with this chork zone 2. But actually, let me just modify it to show that it's working and not just, you know, just doing random things. So let me just spawn one single thing, and that one single thing is gonna be, place your bets in the comments what it's gonna be, because I don't even know. It's gonna be a fish bluegill item. I'm gonna spawn between 1 and 5 of it. Alright, cool. And so then that is how to do that. Now with these spawn points here, how I get these in is I directly edit the prefab to add them in, but I'm sure there is another way using spawn set the spawn point of the world. No, let me do, yes, spawning markers. So this, because it is spawn marker add. Oh, and then I can say which one specifically it is. So let's do a Outlander peon, for example, and bam. So that is the way to do it. I haven't actually done that before. But if it's in the wrong location, you can always grab the, where is it? It is the entity tool right here. Click it, move it, drag it around, scroll it to position it wherever you want. And bam, there we go. If you want to create your own spawn markers, let's go back into the asset editor here and go into, let's see, NPC it would be, and then spawn marker. So we want to create a spawn marker here, and let us go based off of a bat. Sure, let's go off of a bat spawn marker, and this is our custom spawner that we have here. This is just saying what model we see, which is this here. And then what spawns here. You can then do weights here, so you can like, for example, I could do between bat and ice bat, for example. And then you can see that there's a lot of other stuff here, which kind of just makes sense if you read through it. So for example, here you can see after 1 day, it'll be able to respawn a bat if the bat dies for some reason. The exclusion radius basically makes sure that no NPCs spawn right on top of the player. So if the player's within 10 blocks, the NPC won't respawn at that point. Max drop height basically checks to make sure that it is a valid spawn point for it, so it doesn't just drop to its death every time. And then deactivation distance, if the player goes outside of its range, then it just stores the NPC for later, to then be respawned. But yeah, cool. So we have our new one now, actually. What did we name it? We named it Custom Spawner. So if I go into here, type in if I could type correctly, Custom Spawner. Oh, nice. Okay, cool. I was worried it wouldn't work because it wasn't in the tab list, but it could have just not been updated yet. So we have our custom spawner with our bats. We also have these ones. I'm actually just gonna remove these if I can. Do I have the option for that? Delete. Cool. Nice. I can hit delete. Oh yeah, one more thing. For these prefab spawners here, or for these prefabs, is that a lot of times, you know, you like say for example I want this to be a cave where someone can go down, and I want this to carve into the earth. I would use these editor empty blocks. These editor empties will basically replace whatever it is with empty. So yeah, I'm just gonna have like a little pit here that'll be placed at this location, and now I can save it. So I hit E. I'm gonna save this as that. Perfect. Now I'm going to not leave. I can do P edit exit as it says right here to exit it. It'll say the same thing even though I have saved it. It's just warning you in case you haven't. I'm gonna fall into the pit. Nice. So now we have that. I actually want to go in here and remove the other prefabs that I have for that, and I just want to test the 0-1. I don't want the other ones to be randomized into it. So let me go back here. So let me do another one of these and add this. Perfect. Nice. I'm taking this, I'm attaching it here. You can see why now it may be better to have the the prop be imported. Actually, I wonder if prop distributions can be imported, because that could also be quite useful. If I can find where I'm, yeah, prop distributions can also be imported into a different thing. Oh, can it be here? No, it can't. Oh, yes, I can. Okay, cool. So actually, I recommend doing an import of a prop distribution, so you have as compact code as possible, and it's not all splayed out here. Okay. Anywho, going back to what I was doing. This is all the same. I want it to be the same tests. This will be different in the terms of I want to scan specifically for that prefab, which is located. Oh, and this is so cool. Now I can view my view my prefab. I couldn't do that before. Okay, I want it to be monuments encounter outpost, and then that's it. That's all that it has up there. I think I had it under like a custom folder before, but now it's just that. I'm gonna just reset that to 1 just in case. And then here I want to do the import node that I have up here, because I want them to spawn specifically at the center of the islands for little, again, points of interest. Trying to go through that. Let me also do the occurrence so it's not everywhere. I just want it to be probably about a third as common. So every third island will have this prefab. Let's see what this does. Let's see if this works. Another thing to think about whenever you're creating prefabs is to try and limit the amount of the amount of width that we have per prefab, not just for loading it like this, but also for the scanners. You want to kind of limit the amount as much as possible. Alright, so our little prefabs have loaded here. You can see we have our little divot here. We can also see a little bit of that problem where these grass blocks think that there's the grass here from before, but now this is then carved it out. And I imagine then like these trees are kind of like intertwined with the tree that's here. You can see it's kind of like mixing between both of them. And so how to prevent this is to just have an order of runtimes. So since everything's on 0, it's all running at the same time. But what I'd recommend is that the grass and the trees run next. And since we didn't notice any issues with that, I'm actually just going to put them both at 1. So these will both run after these structures are placed. However, I will warn you to not always rely off of this, to then just always increment. A way that I kind of thought to maybe do it is from this, you can then do a position cell noise with the field function to then make sure that you have just no points in general spawn around here. And then you could all probably have it under 0, but that's if your prop is very circular in area, or else you'll have like just a big empty patch here. But anywho, you can see in here we have our bluegill, we have our fish, and we also should have our spawn markers, which we don't for some reason. I'm a little bit unsure as to why. Hey, editor me here. I just wanted to jump back in and say that I checked through the logs and it said that the bat didn't have room enough to spawn. I assume it was probably checking for some type of ceiling above it or something like that. So in the asset editor, I changed it to a tortoise, and then that was able to spawn. So, you know, it can be a little bit finicky, but always check the logs to figure out what's happening. But otherwise, these spawn markers should work. Also, to see the spawn markers, I forgot to mention it before, but I have show entity markers here selected so I can actually see them. I forget that a lot of the settings keep between versions. Something else that we can do actually is if you don't like this, if you're trying to like make some padding here with like rocks and stuff like that, but you'd prefer that the actual natural terrain is here first, then we can do a little bit of a mask node here, and there's two ways to do it. You can do a mask prop here where you have the prop, and then we will go through and mask it and say that we don't want to replace anything that isn't air. So pretty much it'll only place if it's in air is what that means. So if I do this and reload, now we should see that you know, the grass and any other blocks will override our prefabs that we have here. However, you know, maybe that's not what we want, because now we got rid of all our dirt and we got rid of our little indent here. Well, I figured out the kind of specific operation of stuff that we need here to get that done. So let me quickly open up actually another node editor to see what I did, because I forgot the exact technique. I was messing around with it a lot to try and get exactly what I wanted. I was specifically able to have blocks like stone only be placed within air to not override any materials that are pre-existing there, like the terrain. And that is specifically in here. So this is the technique that I did. So let me copy this over into here. Yeah, we don't need that. Perfect. So if I instead do an advanced rule where any block that is rock, stone, is the source block, it can only replace things that are air, and this only affects blocks that are stone is how that works. It was a little bit complicated to kind of work through that and figure that out, but I was eventually able to get that. Okay, perfect, nice. So now the stone, you can see, is still spawning where there's not any, or where there is air, but then we still have our other blocks, like our empties and our dried mud, I think is what this is, dry dirt. Perfect. So yeah, that's kind of all the new stuff that I learned with props. Now as you can see, our world is loading a little bit slow and kind of stuttering. I don't know what that's all about. And so then one of the ways that we can kind of deduce on what's happening is if we open up help and then client logs, it'll open up our logs here, which is very useful because then, perfect, because then we can see exactly what is happening. So every time the world reloads, which happens somewhere, anyways. Main part is that you look for this performance report. I was wondering if it would say like something's been modified reloading, but the performance report here will give you the total time that it takes to generate the terrain. So right here it takes a total of 109 milliseconds, and it breaks down what process does what. So the biome stage is relatively quick, the biome distance stage relatively quick, the terrain stage is taking the most time, and then the prop stage, as you can see, it's split up into two because we have two of those runtime values there. We have that 0, and then we have the 1, so you can tell that it'll build up performance if it's already split up into two different processes here. And then the tint stage, and then the environment stage. So the biggest stage right here is the terrain stage, so we can kind of further break that down as well by isolating parts, just kind of a little, you know, just kind of debugging different parts by isolating it. So for example, let's just do the island shapes, for example. If I just hit reload there, this may do something weird because now I'm not exporting that node. But if we look at the logs should have now updated, And if we scroll all the way to the bottom and scroll up to see the latest one, we can see that content generation has gone down has gone up. Hey, I just wanted to pop here and add that I accidentally looked at the sample count of 1 whenever I was looking at the performance report, and I also didn't talk about sample counts. Sample counts is basically how many chunks have been loaded to sum up that average that you see. So if you just get a sample count of 1, that's going to be a really high number as it's loading everything for the first time, but a sample count of 100 or even 500 is much better to get an accurate estimate of what it is. And if you want to get an estimate like 500 pretty consistently, then I would recommend doing viewport radius 11, as that will be able to load consistently a 500 sample count for you to be able to test. And then whenever you're doing small changes, of course, you can put your radius back down to not explode your computer every time you load so many chunks. Alright, so I'm not entirely sure where the performance went up there since I had less density, but something that you should definitely do if you are just testing for getting your performance down, specifically for your density, is to detach everything else, like the props and materials, because oftentimes those can inflate the density numbers, as, I mean, you'll see in this example. You can see that it has actually gone down to 65, instead of being at the 400 or 300, and that may seem weird because it was all in the terrain stage, but the reason why that is because the prop stages like build up the terrain stage a whole bunch. It has to continuously call this over and over, so it builds this up and inflates this number even though it may not even be the terrain exactly that's building that up, and it's mainly the props that are doing that. So that's good to know, that's good to know. Some tips, by the way, for optimization. I think there's like a lot of good ones in the essentially this Hytale modding site here, where you have WorldGen tutorial optimizations. You have a lot of it here, again talking about having props not be too wide and trying to split them up as much as possible to you know, make sure that it's not like asking for this terrain a whole bunch. But a technique that I learned recently that you can actually use to reduce the amount of like performance that the props generate by just continuously inflating the terrain performance a whole bunch is actually not even using the locator, because the locator prop is where all that performance is going. So a technique that I saw is by using the square grid 3D. Our goal here is to do a less intensive density test before we even get to the prop stage. Now, in order to do this with the square grid 3D, we will actually need to then, instead of doing the base, we'll then do a field function of the density node. Not the density, the terrain. It's already a density. Oh, that's the positions. I'm typing in all the wrong stuff. The terrain density, which, by the way, is just the output from here. Let me also move all this over. This is also the first time of me trying this, so hopefully it works. But if we do the terrain density and we have the delimiter for the terrain density, where it is exactly pretty much at that 0 level, which again would kind of be the boundary of this density here, we can then set that to be where our props are. So if I reload here and see if this works, this is specifically for the grass. Immediately, I'm not seeing anything, which isn't promising. Oh, okay. Well, I've made a slight mistake and just covered the whole thing in grass. This is why you need a lot of stuff for that. I think I am actually specifically only going to call this map top layer. I think this may be what's causing the issue, as I mean, kind of this is always going to be 0. Based off of those nodes there. So let me test this. Oh, my game is lagging because of how much grass it's having to load. Yes, perfect. Nice. Now we have specifically on that layer grass, which if we look at our logs, I imagine it will have gone down because we're not getting the terrain density as much, which it looks like it has. It's gone down by a decent amount. Of course, it's not perfect. I would need to also make sure that we're you know, within the actual confines of the island and not just have it everywhere. Be another little kind of optimization thing that you can sort of consider at sort of more of an advanced level, because this will probably take a while to be able to kind of get perfect after many iterations as I wasn't able to do here. But definitely something to think about. Something that could actually be done if we want to just get it done quick. It will add a little bit more back onto our cost. But technically now we don't need to scan along the Y level, since the Y level has already been determined based off of the this grid that we've created here. And so hopefully this should be a lot more accurate and be a lot more cost efficient. Nice. Okay, cool. Cool. Wait for that all to load, and then we can check the logs again. You know, always checking with the logs. Always checking what it's saying, if our environment's terrible or if we're actually improving. Somehow we went up. I think maybe just because we're not loading as many little grass bits into the world. But yes, nice. A couple other things that you can kind of consider while you're going through it. Not mentally, but like for the terrain stuff. You can, for example, apply this, which is where you only do calculations within a certain Y level and not everywhere, which I think this technique will be, you know, it's decently useful now, but will be 100% useful whenever we have infinite world height, because we don't want a calculation of a simplex noise going from the bottom, the infinite bottom to the infinite top. You want it only being done through a certain Y level. And again, you would have solid here, whatever calculations you do, and then empty. So how you would do this here, which is also good because we're again caching it and all that, is by having a multi-mix. This is, again, as it said, we have air, we have our calculations, and then we have just solid. Just solid ground. We don't need to do any calculations outside of that. We'll want to gauge this based off of the base height that we have here. And we know the values that we'll need for this. So at -5 here, it is always just going to be solid. So we can set it to the second node here. You can see number 2. We'll set it to the second node. And then once this base height reaches, actually we'll need to decrease this by -6, and then immediately at -5, we'll then do our calculation, so it's not like interpolating between them. We want it to be exactly happening right at that Y value. Let me move all this up so I have a little bit more room. And then from -5 to 5, we'll again want to just do this, and then interpolating between 5 and 6, it'll then just become air. So if we do all of this, this should also sort of be a boost in performance. I mean, this isn't too complicated to perform. It is a decent amount, but you know, not that much. But we are also exporting and using it in multiple of other places, so it is good to try that out. So if we run this, we should see. Actually, well, nothing happened because it'll work the exact same. We can see something happen though if we just go for this, and instead of doing yeah, and actually, yeah, I can just modify these. Instead of doing air calculations solid, I can then instead do air, solid, and then air to see the exact like Y layer that we're calculating here. Just kind of a good baseline to make sure that we're doing everything right. So if I go into the world here, yep, okay, cool. We are only doing calculations for these 10 blocks, which is very, very nice. So let me change all that back, reload, and then I can check with the positions, or with the islands. Bring the islands back, please. Yes, perfect. We can then check what it looks like on the performance map. So let me load all this in very, very quickly, hopefully. Load up that notepad again, go all the way down to here, and we can see that we have decreased the time just a little bit more. slowly, that's pretty much all that optimization is finding whatever's taking the largest amount of time and finding optimizations per thing, and seeing what's used a lot and seeing what could be the most resource intensive. I thought, like, like possibly this is probably the most resource intensive using these position cell noises. But this is also used a lot. So, you know, like a good test could also just be while disconnecting the props and the materials, just running solely this and then solely that, and seeing which one you should sort your priority on more. Because, you know, ultimately at the end of the day, you can always do optimizations, but which ones like truly matter, I guess. But another optimization that I want to do here that I had a thought of and I did for my mod Wormhole Ascent is that this min density, unlike the mixed density where, you know, you can or the multi-mix where it only does the calculation for this or this and it like completely skips the generation of any complex nodes, for min I realized it's just doing the calculations for both this one and this one for every single block. And technically, it actually doesn't need to do that. If this is already an air block, it doesn't need to then calculate the air block for this. The air block has already been calculated. Now, if you are doing some more like specific stuff with min, where you need to get like the -2, -3 values or whatever like that, then it would be specific like that. But instead, we can just plug in a mixed density for this. So. Let me see. So this is the gauge. This is saying that if it's -1 to 0, I think I would just do -1 to make sure that it's still doing air, which would need to be all the way up here. And then I can do this here. You can do the same. You can switch this out for the max block as well. You can also do this mixed density, because now, again, as I said, if it's air, then it's not going to calculate the Veroni noise that we have here, or the cell noise that we have here. So let me try this. This may not. No. I think this should work actually. Yeah. Let me run this. Nothing should change. Except some stuff is changing. I think just because I'm setting it to -1. I think maybe the issue. So let me set this to 0. And I'm trying to think if there could be anything else that could be causing this to happen. Okay, perfect. Yeah, just need to set it to 0 instead of -1. And now, any blocks that are above this, it doesn't have to calculate these cylinders or these ellipsoids that I have here. Which, always got to go back to the performance graph that we have here. Has hopefully brought it down a lot more. Cool. Just little tips like that, little tips, tricks, finding out how to reduce the calculations as much as possible. Again, for the cell noise, I could also do it to where it like stops calculating whenever it goes below this Y value, but it's the rinse and repeats, and I'm not gonna go through that. Although it is very satisfying getting performance down increasingly more and more. But yeah, so now I kind of want to go over the thing that I said I'd go over at the very beginning. I believe I started recording this a couple times, so I'm not sure, but we're going to go over spawn points now. So spawn positions are set here now. If you have an old, let me see, if you have an old instance object, then you could have the spawn point set in here, which you'll want to remove because it will override it. I don't have a spawn point set in here, so it will use the new system, but you know, just check, just make sure that's not in there, just to, you know, see. But right in here, this is where they set the spawn points. This is a list, it looks like. So at pretty much at 200 you're gonna spawn, or at 0 200 0, or at 30 200 0, or at 10 220 are positions that you can spawn. But we can also modify this the exact same that you can modify these. So what I normally like to do is I normally just like to, you know, write it out here in the node editor as I'm very much used to this, and be like, okay, well, you know, I want to spawn here, I want to do this, and then I can then like take this and then translate it 1-to-1 to here. So like I want to do a scalar, and a scalar will be here. Alright, so I'll do just that, except I've actually already done it. I want to spawn in an island. I don't want to spawn, you know, 200 blocks up, or I don't want to spawn, you know, in the void, essentially. I want to spawn in one of these islands. So a very simple way to do that is to just, use the same where is it? The same positions that I have here, which is exported as island points. Now, I'm not sure if I can export to then import into a framework, but I will try and see what happens. But as always, the first thing that you do need to do is you need to have a bounds. If you do not have a bounds, since this is generating, you know, infinite points, at least in the last release that I tried it, it did not work. So I want to spawn within, you know, within 100 blocks of, you know, 000. Whoops, I'm messing this all up. It's hard to math and think at the same time. This Y position, I could like get the density and do a field function to respawn the player like right on the block, but you know, since you won't get fall damage if you just fall from like this height, I can do pretty much the maximum of what these would spawn at, which would be 105. So I'm just gonna, at this bounds, it doesn't matter too much. Maybe I could set it to 105 here, but instead I'm gonna set it, I could set it with the base height, or I could just do an offset as I'm doing here. So 105 will be the position, and then I want to do yeah, okay, so after this I think I can do an import. Actually, well, the only thing with that is it already has a base height, so I actually only want to offset it by 5 points then. I don't want to spawn 205. So if I import the same thing as island points, then it should work, right? Yes. Okay, cool. So if I now you may think this may work if I just kill myself and spawn back in, but you can see I still spawn at the 30 200 0. And there's two ways to get around this. One is to just type /instance and spawn into a new instance, and it should update to the new thing. Okay, well, I'm falling again. Okay, well, it should work like this. I'm not exactly sure why it's not working. Hey, editor, me again. I went in back to figure out what was happening here, and as I hinted at before, you cannot import positions from a biome file, as well as you also need to have a seed string listed for the jitter, or else it just does not work. And then I also forgot to mention, but make sure that your top node has an export as the same name that you're importing for the spawn points. And everything worked properly after that. But for now, I'm just gonna go back. I'm just gonna do instance exit to go back just one layer of instances that I've created, just to go all the way back to the original, because I don't know, I like the original world that I was in. Oh no, before I fall to my doom. This is back to the original world, and then what I can do is world prune, and I just need to do the confirm, and then that'll delete all the other instances that I created, just to kind of clean everything up. You can also do world list, just to list all of them that you have, and yeah. Another way that you can test besides just creating instances over and over, that worked last time. I don't know if it's updated, but if you're in your save folder here, if you go into universe, then you go into players, and then you click on essentially this is me, and the reason why there's two is just because one is, you know, I guess kind of cached or something like that. I'm not sure what that means. And this is everything to do with the player. And if you go all the way to, let's see, yeah, so if you find the one that you're in, so it'd be this one, instance my biome. If you put first spawn to true, well, you first have to close out of the world, change first spawn to true, and then reload into the world. Like you'd have to completely get out and get back in, then you'd be able to load. Alright, so moving on, I want to talk a little bit about environments, and one thing I want to do is actually split up the environment into two different ones. So I'm going to detach this and then do a density delimited, the only option here. And then I'm just going to do just the Y value, you know, it's the same thing as the base, it doesn't really matter that much. I just want to know the range of everything here. Okay, let me move this over further. Okay, and then let me, yes, okay, create another one of these. So the reason why I'm doing Y is just to make sure that I get every single block. So from 0 to 322, it's going to be that. But I want to do, if you go below, let's say 75, I want it to be like a deeper, different zone. So it's the I'm just going to call it the deeper environment, if I can spell correctly. The naming convention is typically environment deeper. I can't type. Okay. And if I do this, it isn't gonna work because, well, it's not. You can check the environment, by the way, by hitting F7 twice, and then on the right here you can see what environment it is. But right, it's not gonna load. Whoa! Forgot that we have a huge world now. It's not gonna load correctly because I just reloaded back in, and I need to reset my zone that I have. Oh no, I don't have it. It is viewport radius equals, let's do 3. Nice. Okay, so this is reloaded. I think this is just gonna become unknown. Yep, it's gonna be environment unknown because it isn't actually defined in here. And since I reload the world, I need to reload the asset editor as well. Alright, so in here, environments are right here. Cool. Actually, yeah, I can go through this. This one here, I'm gonna name, or I'm gonna have Caves Volcanic. So I'm gonna duplicate it into my own. Yeah, tutorial 3. It's gonna be environment deeper. Nice. Cool. So what environments can do, I didn't go over this too much in my previous videos, but you can specifically set the water tint and the particles within the water, spawn density, meaning how many mobs just in general spawn within that environment, and then also what weather, kind of happens for this specific zone. Actually, let me try and change this. Okay, cool. It's still a problem in this pre-release. So don't try and edit that. In here, you have to edit it manually in your files in a text editor. Until that is fixed. Let me go back here, environment deeper. And did this already update? No, it hasn't. I'll need to do this, just hit the refresh, and it should refresh everything. There we go, environment deeper, and it should change a few things just based off of that environment that's already set. Now it's doing the transition between them. So you can see it's doing a transition between sunny and cave volcanic. Unfortunately, you can't change the speed of this. Sometimes I wish I could for specific circumstances. But yes, now you have kind of different heights, and with these different heights you can spawn different enemies. You can have different music and sounds, which music and ambience and the SFX is all listed here of what this specific zone has, which I'll describe where you can find as well. But the main thing I wanted to do is create a new weather. Yeah, sure, blood moon. Custom environment, or sorry, custom weather, just to show you what you can do with the weather. So with the weather, you can set everything that you can see in the sky. So you can set what stars you're seeing, the screen effect. Some good ones are like if you're freezing. Yeah, if you're in a winter storm, or if there's a sand breeze coming through, or if you're inside water, if you're on fire. Daggers, I guess, is if you're going fast. There's like a few more in here than there were before, I think. If it's a poisonous one, you can have a screen effect of that. You can set the fog distance. The fog distance is determined based off of the player distance. So this is the beginning of the fog. The beginning of the fog starts negative 96 blocks back. If I set the fog, here, I'm trying to figure out how to, it is also set to custom weather. You can see if I click away, it'll go back to cave volcanic, but if I click custom weather, it'll automatically like show you in the viewport, quote unquote viewport of what the weather is, even if the environment doesn't set it. So yeah, like for example, I can show you the poison, so you can see it looks like we're poisoned. The fog distance is how the fog is. Let me change the fog color. This is a lot of just the standard colors. And I'm just gonna change it. Sure, I'll change it to black so you can see that you generally have a black sky, and then I think the sky top colors may change that fog color to that kind of brighter blue up there. You'll have to play around with a lot of these to really get the things that you want. But I just kind of want to show off a few of the things. So for example, if I move this one really far back, you're going to be in the middle of the fog, of the kind of fog layer. So you can see it did get a little bit more foggy in this kind of environment here. But then I can also move up the close plane, or the like max fog closer to the player as well. So I can do 100, and you can only see 100 blocks in front of you, and you're already at like probably 90% of the fog based off of this. If I set this to 0, then it's going to be 0 fog where you are, and then at 100 it's going to be full fog. Just a little, kind of things to mess around with. Another thing that I do kind of like doing, I think is, maybe, oh, here it is, effective view distance multiplier. If I set this to like -100 or something like that, oftentimes what happens is if you're loading new terrain, the fog will kind of close in on the player. And specifically, I guess for Wormhole Ascent, I didn't want that. I didn't want that fog to be affected by any type of loading or things like that. So I set this to -100 for that not to affect the terrain at all, or not to affect the fog. But yeah, just general stuff you can see. Another thing is particles, which oftentimes I just kind of go through here. Some good ones is always within weather. Here's a common one, so you can add in some fireflies, for example. Now you have some fireflies flying around. You can see that they're not colored anything good, but you can always go through and change that color and make it all look very mystical, actually, already down here, which is very nice to see. But yeah, just some very standard stuff I wanted to show off, because I mean I think it is useful, even if you don't get too much into it, because it adds just so much ambience to your world. Speaking of ambience, let us go into the sounds and music. Oh, okay, cool. It's all within ambience effects. It kind of all moved around a little bit, but you have each of the things that you need: the ambience, music, and the reverb zones. So for the music, for example, if you want, I recommend just kind of starting with this. Again, we're just going over the ambience of a lot of this stuff. The music container has kind of changed to where now you have references to tracks that kind of loop and play different soundtracks and stuff like that. So if I click in here, you'll say it'll go into this playlist, and this playlist will have a whole list of tracks that it can play. So if you want to get into that, you can. This is, again, just quick ambience that you can add for different zones. Main thing you want to pay attention to is this conditions here. This one is specifically a tag pattern. So if you have a tag that's zone 4 for your environment, it will play zone 4 dark. If you have a tag that says jungles, then it'll play zone 4 jungle. And that is generally how the music ones are set up. You also have weather tag patterns as well, which you can set. So if it's raining, or if it's swamp rain and it's set to zone 1, then it'll play zone 1 day rain. And so then essentially all that you want to do is for your weathers or for your environments, set those tags up correctly to then match that. So if I'm going to, yeah, there you go, environment deeper, tags, this is what I'm talking about. So this is zone 4, caves, volcanic. So if it has any of these tags, it will have that music. So yeah, and then also for, again, the weather, it would do the same thing. For the custom weather, here we go, the tags. So for this tag, I can put it to like rainy or dread or something like that, and you can set up custom music that way. But just a quick way that I like doing it is checking through here, checking which tags. Is like, oh, I want to play zone 1 dungeon. Okay, well, how do I do that? I just need to set it to zone 1 dungeons, and then it will be able to play this specific music. Ambience, it is set differently. So if I go into, let's say I want a nice Quebec Village ambience effects of, I'm sure it's like a coffee shop vibe that we're getting here. These ones are set through environment IDs. So these ones you will have to manually duplicate and put into your own to then add in your own environment ID. So for example, if I want again this one here, this one will be my Quebec Village. To then add in my environment ID instead. I want to go here, zone 4, environment deeper, and so now the ambience should change at some point. I'm in, there we go. Ambience is music zone 4 caves, I think just because it's set to that. But yeah, again, it's just kind of looking through it all and figuring out which ones you want for what. And then finally going over the effects. Effects is like any reverb that you have. So if you're in a cave, you know, you can have like an ice cave, you can have, you know, reverb. Reverb effects. This is a specific thing which you can change all this stuff. You know, you don't have to look into it, but it is, you know, there's some nice presets here that you can kind of build off of, essentially. And the conditions have actually changed since the last update to where now it'll do automatic detection depending upon if it thinks you're in a cave, if you're surrounded by ice, or like if you're surrounded by leaves or something like that. But of course you can still create your own and then set it manually based off of the environment IDs that you set. I'm sure these also affect voice chat as well. So some things to think about for adding ambience into your little WorldGen worlds. The last thing I want to go over for WorldGen is the spawning. So we had the spawning of all of that other stuff, but now I want to cover the spawning. Go back. Now I want to cover just general spawning of things in the world. So if I go back to NPC and spawning, yeah, you can see world NPC spawn. This is exactly what I want. This is going to be my custom spawn, and you always want to do it off of a reference. So I'm just going to do zone 0 cold, or that's going to be ocean. What? It doesn't matter. I'm going to replace them anyways. So in here, I can replace what it has. This is environment zone 0 cold. I'm instead going to replace it with let's see, environment zone 1 plains, just because, you know, they don't have anything to spawn on otherwise. Environment zone 1 plains, perfect. So now in here, what's gonna spawn? It's gonna spawn a T-Rex, just because I know those are in the cave, or in the game. You can have a weight of how often it can spawn. I'm just going to set it all the way to 100. You can set what blocks they spawn on as well. You can set what fluids they spawn on. I think I just saw a T-Rex spawn as well. Yep, now the T-Rex are spawning in the zone 1. So this is how you do the general spawns. You can also, of course, have a flock of, for example, if you know that, you know, it typically has a parent and a child, you can also, you know, group them up like that. You can, if it's like raptors, you know, they spawn in packs, you can set that, or bunnies, or anything like that. You can always have them spawn in packs. Now there's a lot spawning, and I can make a lot more spawn as well by, you know what to change if you go into environment. Oh, I don't have it able to be modified. I was going to change it to like 100 and then just have 100 of them spawn. But unfortunately, I don't have that set for the environment zone 1 plains. I could override it, of course, but I won't be doing that. Alright, cool. And that is, again, everything that you need to know for the new world generation stuff. So what is next? Well, now that I've kind of talked about all this, I want to talk about sort of my process and how I get started in a lot of this stuff, specifically kind of on the creative side. So there's a few things that I kind of go through, and I just kind of mainly just absorb all of this, and then kind of, you know, something eventually kind of springs to mind. The first thing is to look at the vanilla generation. Like, for example, this structure here was just kind of like a modified version of like a much bigger Hytale structure that was already in the game. which again you can now fully search through here a lot better, and you can get a lot of inspiration this way, or you know, checking a lot of the stuff that Hytale has to provide. They have a lot of stuff already, which is quite impressive for being early access, but they have a ton of stuff to build off of and inspire you in your own ways. Like for example, I took a lot of the different biomes or the zones from Hytale and did that for Wormhole Ascent. A few other things that you can do is, you know, be inspired by what other people have done. For example, you know, a lot of people are posting about the WorldGenV2 journey with the hashtag WorldGenV2. You can see like this is majestic. Like you see mushrooms and you're like, oh, what if I could create a mushroom land with except it's like lava everywhere or something. You can also look at other art, like for example, you know, I've just seen Noah Bradley's stuff pretty consistently on my feed of just very impressive terrain that is definitely inspiring for for world generation. Even though it's not in Hytale, I could definitely see, you know, some of the techniques and things that could be probably used for that. And again, kind of going off of this, also like real life pictures, like going out to a local park and taking pictures and then being able to recreate the mountains and stuff that you see is just, you know, really inspiring, I think. And then sometimes, you know, sometimes you need a theme. So like, for example, I found this as well, where it has fantasy landscape ideas. You know, love fantasy. Hytale is meant to be a fantasy game. This even has some inspiration pictures. Wow, that looks incredible. Crystal caves. Oh man, imagine that in Hytale. That'd be so cool. And yeah, just in general, you know, maybe have a goal. Maybe have something that the player is trying to achieve. Like maybe they're trying to reach this center point. Maybe there's a story that's to be told. That like, oh, the reason why it's flying is because of this, and you need to save the world because of that, or something like that. Like for example, Wormhole Ascent, the reason why that exists is because, you know, I had a goal of the player needs to get from the bottom to the top, and that prevented a lot of different challenges while also providing a lot of inspiration for different things that I could try and do to try and accomplish both goals of having really cool looking terrain while, you know, having the player move from point A to point B. But that is just kind of the general creative side. What about the technical side? How do you learn all that? You can learn pretty easily through the again, a lot of the biomes that Hytale has. It already has some WorldGenV2 stuff in it. So if you go to, again, Hytale, install, release or pre-release, and then if you go all the way to assets right here, you can see their own assets. You can also, of course, see it in here, but in here, if you unzip it, specifically the Hytale generator biomes, you can unzip and then you can load these into the node editor. It can be a little bit overwhelming because it is just a lot, and they've iterated upon it a lot. You can very clearly tell they've also done a lot of performance improvement to it. So just, you know, there's a lot, and take it piece by piece, and you can even take it apart piece by piece by like only having one density on at a time, so you can like disable this one and check out the rest and how that works. Some other things is, of course, testing around. You see a new node, hey, what does that do? You know, if you want to create something, like for example, I wanted to have it to where any like sharp terrain, like for example this, I wanted sharp terrain to have a different feature to it. I basically kind of did research and tested out what different nodes did, and one of the nodes that I found that could provide that was the angle node. I was able to get the angle. I'm clicking so much stuff. I was able to get the angle from basically directly up. So this is like a 45-degree angle compared to like a 20-degree angle here. And so then for that 45 degrees, I was able to specifically do something here. So again, test around, see what the nodes do, play around. Like for example, you have this that was created by the name's hidden. It's a German name. You'll be able to find them on Twitter. But for example, this was created through just experimenting with the nodes. And the next thing is to just look at the documentation. You know, I've been studying it over, you know, all the density stuff, and just kind of thinking like, okay, well, what could I do? And looking through and thinking like, oh well, shell. I've actually never used that before, and this would actually maybe be able to do exactly what I'm trying to do. You know, asking for help. You can either ask one of the many WorldGen artists on Twitter how they've been making some of their works of art, or I've also included the Discord link to the Hytale modding Discord, where there's a help chat specifically for WorldGenV2, and myself and many others will be there able to answer your questions. And then finally, I recommend, you know, doing research. You can do research for both the creative or the technical aspect just on YouTube. I mean, that's kind of how I made these mountains here. There was a YouTube video about the erosion of mountains, like a study of it, and so I was able to apply that to Hytale. And overall, I think you can definitely learn a lot from videos like that. And then the next thing that I want to mention is that while you are working on your world, this is a little bit more of an advanced topic, but sometimes, you know, you want to do something in the world, but it just doesn't seem possible. Like, for example, for Wormhole Ascent, let me see if I can pull up a picture of it, of what I'm talking about. For this world right here, I wanted to create, yes, vines that connected from island to island, essentially. I created the islands pretty much in the same way that I did here, but I wanted to create vines that connected to each of them. However, it's just not possible in the current setting. And so then what I had to do is I instead had to place positions elsewhere manually. That then, through the cell wall, I was able to create vines, which, you know, is a little bit complicated and a little bit unfortunate that it had to be that complicated, but, you know, it was able to work. But I'd like to have a much more procedural way to do it, and is why I made like my own mod for it, which I encourage you to check out. You know, mods for different like nodes that you can add. I know there's not a lot, but you know, there are some useful ones. Like for example, I know that someone called Verde is making a method to be able to do the biomapping a lot easier, because I mean, as probably everyone's figured out, the biomapping is really difficult. But yeah, so that's, you know, just a quick little thing that I wanted to say. If you run into any roadblocks with WorldGen, that there are other options to be able to get some specific things to happen that you may want in your world. But now that you've created it, what are some of the best ways to advertise it? Because you made your mod, but you know, perhaps not a lot of people are seeing it, or you're entering into a mod contest. So what are some ways to do it? For one, you could just press F8 twice and not hit F7 like I did, and then just fly around the world, like as you see here, and you know, clip in between different shots. You can also use the Machinima tool. If you hit B and then hit the Machinima here, you can create a new scene. So I'm just gonna create a new one real quick. This is the tutorial 3 scene, where I'm just gonna do a quick little thing. Yes, I'm just gonna have the camera, create actor. Typically you'd want to start setting this all up where you'd want to show it. And I'm gonna select it here, and then if I enter here, I need to make sure I have the camera in my hand as well. You can also set up green screen as well if you like. So yeah, as you can see, the camera's already set up here. And then let me see, what was the button? I believe if you hit, oh, there's lightning happening. I believe if you hit, yes, X. So for example, I'm starting here, I want to go over here, and then I hit X. Perfect, it added the frame at 30, and then I want to go all the way around to like here, hit X, and then, you know, I go all the way up to here, hit X, and then I have like a little path here, and then what I can do is I can then click and drag to move them around. If, for example, I don't like the path that it's taking, so like right there, you know, it's a little bit windy. If you want to, I can hit N to open it back up. I can hit, if I'm out of the Machinima, I hit C. I can open this up, and then I can hit N again to then, you know, pan through, or can hit play to kind of see it loop around. But of course, you know, here it's a little bit too close. Where is it? Here it's a little bit too close, so I want to add another keyframe actually. So if I'm here and I hit right click, I can add a new node, and then I can go back here, and from this new node I can then move this around. Whoops. Nice. Okay, cool. And so now I have a more detailed path. But as you can see, if I'm using the left and right arrows, it does kind of like loop around really fast, especially since all of it's within the 30 frame limit. So what you can do is you can do mock. Whoops. Let me open up the. I'm hitting all the wrong buttons. So if you open up the text here, mock speed 30, it'll then modify all your curve points to then be at a speed of 30. So if I go back in and I hit right, you can see now all of it's generally at the same speed. Everything's all split out correctly, and it's just a way that you can go through this. Now, unfortunately, there is no way to export this as a video, so I would recommend something like OBS to then screen record. Again, hit F8 twice to clear everything, and then you can then just hit play to have it all play through. And then the third method that you can do for, you know, kind of showcasing your world is doing a step-by-step. I've seen a couple of people do that, and I think it's really cool, where essentially like for example, I just like remove this. I just set this as a constant of 1, and I save. I don't know if I have a viewport somewhere. Oh, I do. So for example, I just set up my player here. I do this, I hit F8 twice, and then I hit F12 to take a screenshot. Bam. And then I open up the editor so I can then change things around. I then go back in and I remove this, and then I go on to the next step that my terrain does, and then save, and then that will load. I should keep this open so I don't accidentally move the camera a little bit. You can also go into your settings and adjust the mouse sensitivity, but here we go, and I can hit picture again. And then now if you go into your Hytale screenshots folder in your pictures, you'll see both of the images that you just took. So you can kind of pan through them, and you can kind of see the progression of the world that you've made. And then through all of this, you can do, you know, you can edit it, just splicing things together, or the raw footage. I personally prefer to use DaVinci Resolve, as it's just, I just think a good tool for both beginners to advanced, but maybe I just think it's good for beginners because I've used it for so long, and I know how everything works and where everything is. But that's how I'm, you know, do my little quick clips of like fading in between different things. But you don't need anything extravagant. It's just showing off the world generation. The main skill set should be shown in the terrain, not the video itself. And also, I guess one more thing that you could do to show off the terrain is just kind of walk around in it, explore, preferably in survival. Oh, I forgot that I had Fulbright on. And then, you know, splice together a recording of that. But yeah, a few methods. Oh, and I did want to mention as well for the Machinima that it does have some pros and cons with it. While it is kind of really good for that, if I, for example, fly all the way over here. Okay, let me fly further away. Okay, so if I hit C, yeah. So you'll see the problem is that the world only loads around the player. It doesn't load around the camera. So if your player is far away, or if you're taking the Machinima camera pretty far, then unfortunately a lot of the terrain may not load, and also the NPCs won't be loading. So just a few things to keep in mind with that. Oftentimes, you know, you can do this if you like hide the player or just showcase like a small portion at a time. But just something to think about. I think the Machinima is a really cool tool, and maybe this will be fixed later. So. The last thing that I wanted to go over is actually my own worlds that I made for the competition. So the first one is a, let's see, Inspo 1. Yes. Is this very unique world kind of inspired by the loading screen whenever you load into a world. And I have each of the steps that I took. And so I wanted to do a quick like example through of kind of the thought processes that I did going through this. So for this first step here, you can see I created just a PV map, which I've talked about before, and I specifically have it marked as kind of like a shore biome here, and then, you know, I don't have the rest set yet, and then I'm specifically making sure that I have the rivers marked out using within the biome. And then I am checking that specific area and then applying a curve map to it based off of the distance S, and then applying another curve map for this portion. And And then I add water, I add a little bit of noise, specifically just to this bottom curve map here, just to make it, you know, a lot more bumpy as you see in the inspiration image. Here, what I'm doing is I'm adding to this specific like height density. It was originally just based off of the PV, but I am adding a little offset, so then I have a little bit more like steeper sections and I have more shallower sections, so I can add in the steps. I'm making sure that cuts off exactly where the ocean is to have some cool overhangs. So moving on, this is selecting the overhangs, so I wanted to make sure that, you know, based off of the density, based off of the high density that I have for the offset here, and it being a river, I wanted to make sure I was selecting this area. I then created another height map that will then be the overhang. So I have one height map that'll be, you know, kind of the general continuation of this land. I have one height map that's the river, and then I'm just creating a third one to then cut out here, so this is just a whole bunch of max and min. So that is what it's done here. So I have the river that's then cut out from this, that's then cut out from that, and you know, it's just a combination of that. If you want any more details on this, by the way, like if you want to see all of this in action besides me just describing it, again, this is available on CurseForge that you can then download and check out for yourself. I made sure to document everything, so hopefully it all makes sense. So this is just another extra image of it that looked really cool, where it had a lot of inset into it. Because this was just a generally wide river. This is another one where I thought it was kind of, it looked kind of weird just because it, like, the top of it is like over the water, or the center of the top is over the water, and you can kind of clearly see it's just a common slope. But anyways, moving on, I wanted to specifically select again that steep area, which I described again with the angle density. Which is just so useful. I just love the angle density. I've used it so much, especially for this project to begin with, but I've used it multiple times as well for other projects. So this one is just checking the 3D noise map against a directional vector going up that the slope is within a certain amount. And as the same that I did whenever I was selecting this area here, I didn't want to just immediately try and create the steps. I wanted to make sure that, you know, each math worked one at a time. So I'm just making sure that only this section's cut out that I want to be for this steep slope, and then I can also then, you know, change the angle that I want that the slopes to start at. This is just me prepping for it. This is all just manual points to where, you know, if it's at this level, I want it to be just a straight drop until it gets to this Y level. This can be done a little bit simpler now with like a non-interpolated Y sampled, although it won't be like, I won't be able to specify like I want big gaps here and like small gaps here. So yeah, this is it in practice. This is without any interpolating. This is just like straight up adding it. So you can see that there's a little bit of like gaps between the terrain that looks kind of weird, but eventually I do interpolate it, as you can see here, and it looks really cool, especially this kind of valley that's here, which with very steep terrain on either sides. And now I'm adding in the materials, just to kind of make it all like spring to life a lot more. I find that oftentimes whenever I'm creating stuff and it's just like all shapes, that it, you know, it can get a little bit boring of like, okay, well now I'm adding this and that, and I don't know if it looks good. But then whenever you add in the colors, whenever you add in the props, whenever you add in just the life to the biome, the shapes start to really stand out a lot more, and it doesn't feel like, you know, it's just kind of like smooth slopes as well. It really kind of breaks up the noise. But yeah, so I started on the materials, and I specifically selected out this area to then do some extra, you know, material math with that. And so then for those, I essentially then took the original section here and essentially just said like, hey, if it's I essentially took this original section here and then made another curve mapper which says it's 1 to -1 to 1 to -1 to 1 to -1 to 1 to -1, and essentially everywhere where there's a huge everywhere that there's a huge section or cliff like this, I set it to be -1, to where in the actual material it'll then be able to put in the stone that I want, to not have just kind of grass at the top here as well as just kind of growing on the side there, to really make it stand out, because a lot of times that's kind of what you want to do for a lot of your features, is make them stand out in some way, make some type of color statement or prop or something like that that really, you know, shows that it's there. So yeah, this is with the kind of adding in some of the smaller props. I've added in kind of sand to the rivers here with a little bit of offset. I then started adding in using sort of the same mask that I did for the overhang here. I just then kind of modified the mask again and then kind of interpolated that mask to kind of raise it up just in this specific section to then have like a rocky cliff, which you'll see here. Yeah, I added some more noise to make it like fallen rocks that have fallen into the water, same as the inspiration image. Here, yeah, this is just cool looking. You have the steep slopes, or the steep steps with the, you know, overhang with all the rocks, which, again, just looks really cool. I then started adding a path. This path is then, you know, just a set distance away from the river. As you can tell, it's using the same noise, except it's only on the positive side of the noise, not on the negative side of the noise, to create this path, which is done purely during materials. I then eventually ended up adding this path into the density as well to kind of make it a little bit inset as well as blend more with this. You know, as you may be able to tell, this is, I mean, just doing a mix node. If it's at this mix level, then like for this point, like minus 0.5 in the density to kind of shift that down halfway. And then for specifically the steps, I just basically mix it to be like, hey, during these parts, there's no steps. It's just make it flat terrain to make sure that it can kind of cut through there and act like it's a trodden path that, you know, has been cut through and has been used. Yeah, this is just another look at it from the other side being cut into. I changed the noise down here again. You may see that a lot. I've also added boulders. Yeah, the boulders, this is just another look. This is really starting to shape together to what it looks like currently. Again, cutting through that steps. It looks a little bit weird, and maybe I want to modify it a bit more, but I think it definitely works for what I was trying to achieve. This is this is specifically props. This isn't density, but this is checking where I would want to spawn a village, because that is the next thing I wanted to work on, and I wanted to. It's essentially using the same, you know, mechanic that I'm doing here, except instead of for materials or density, it's for props. And perfect. Yep, I'm just spawning a point where the position makes sense. And then from that point, that is within that strip, I'm then within this circle area, I want to spawn other props that will then be other, you know, little village assets that I wanted to do. I wanted to really see how much you could create a whole like living ecosystem and village through just the prop, because again, I really wanted to test out all these nodes and see how they worked. So yeah, this is just a little test, and then I started adding in the things based off of a whole lot of properties. So for example, if it's at this Y level, start placing crops. Everywhere else you can start placing like little benches or like little pools. I'm not sure if I started doing the pools yet, but at some point I do. If it's a little bit more inland, spawn these. This is where we had that node where the props could be, you know, kind of mushed into the ground or kind of blended into the ground, which looked really cool for this fenced off area here, but fortunately that's no longer available. Oh, the molding, that's right. And then just on either side of the path, I have these light posts. I also did one more thing, which I don't remember at what point I did it, but I also made sure that the grass didn't spawn close to these areas. I also did this with the trees later, just to make sure that, you know, nothing's in the way. Yeah, so again, here's the pond. I also started adding some houses along the way, and this is another village that spawned close by. Yeah, so you can see actually that the villages are actually facing towards the river, which I think is really cool, and I explain more in detail on one of my Twitter posts on how to do, and I just think it's a really cool technique and allows a lot of possibility. So let me go through. So this is just kind of another example. This is actually kind of later after I'd done a lot of it, but this is whenever I was testing more for optimization purposes, to where now all of this, instead of all being separate runtimes, it's all in one runtime, and then based off of all those values, it's then placing the corresponding thing. So this is just kind of the max, and then I work down from there. Yeah, so going back, I was then adding like a little foresty area, and then now I'm working on the cliffs. Now the cliffs were quite interesting. I started off with the base here. I then, based off of cell noise, I then kind of like broke it down like this, because I wanted to kind of interpolate between these two using noise. So you can see this is kind of that at work. And this is it looking better. I don't know I think I also had it like skinnier in like this direction to make it look really cool like that. This is adding in a lot of the materials, which is starting to really make it take shape. This is with trees. Then I'm working a lot more on the blending between the two biomes, which is very important. Now this part is again quite interesting. I'm using the gradient based off of like the direction of like this you know of the peaks and valley map. As you can see here, here's the valley, here's the peak, and I'm basically using a rotator to rotate this noise to always be kind of rotating in this direction. Now unfortunately the rotator is set to specific positions, so you can see this is one position, this is a second position, third, fourth. But the reason why I'm doing this is for this purpose, is to have the this noise. Yes, this right here, I wanted it to be, like I said, very much more skinnier and like little slivers in this direction. And then for this, I wanted the noise to be I wanted the noise that kind of pushed it down to be more prominent along this axis, the opposite axis, or perpendicular axis. So through that, I was able to do that and make the biome work on all angles pretty much. You can't really notice any of the like little discrepancies like that. But this will come back later for a later project. But yeah, so that's all of it together. I'm then, you know, just kind of checking through, and then for here, I was working really hard to try and see how I could do like a general overhang here. I think what I do is after it gets below a certain Y value, I then just offset all the density inwards, again using that kind of rotator, and then once it gets below a certain Y value again, it then pushes it inwards again. Which is kind of cool. I think it made it a little bit resource intensive, and I mean, I can definitely think of a few other ways that this could be done, but very cool nevertheless. Started adding in caves. Caves were just being tested with pink blocks, pink kind of cylinder blocks, and now it's kind of being cut out. This is how it was for a while. And then eventually I added in kind of like just kind of general block noise afterwards, which made it look a lot cleaner instead of just a hole. I definitely would have considered like making this more of like a prefab that had a hole that could do it, because this looks very kind of just artificial as it looks right now. But in general, everything is looking very cool, very cool. Now time for the peaks. So this, I'm just determining what cell noise to use. Then I'm curve mapping the cell noise to be very pointy in those positions. I'm then using a warp node. I don't remember which one, but they should all kind of achieve the same thing. I think I am specifically though telling the warp to be strongest at the center of the cell and then less towards the end to make sort of this kind of effect where it, you know, it kind of seems, you know, skewed to one side. And then this is it, very much scaled up and with a hard cutoff. I then, you know, because of the hard cut, I didn't want it to be a hard cutoff essentially, so I added this noise, which is based off of, again, the peaks and valleys, to kind of not make it as harsh of a cutoff. So you can see here, this is now that new noise, that was created, that is then just kind of min together. However, this is a smooth min, which doesn't create like hard jagged cutoffs. It is a little bit jagged, but it smooths it out a lot more to where it's, you know, it kind of mixes between them a little bit at the harsher valleys there, which, you know, makes the mountains blend quite nicely into the rest of the terrain, which looks quite nice, as you can see here. But right, this is also going over another technique, which is again the gradient density. If it's facing this direction, I want it to be lighter towards the sunset, and then I want these blocks to be darker as it goes over here, and that is pretty much what I did. I did do another few techniques, like for example, if it's below a certain Y value, I just created it to be snow. If it's above a certain Y value with a little bit of noise, it's also snow. And then if it's flat enough, I also did snow, and then going back into the gradient density. So I used gradient density a lot in the angle node. But yeah, so that is pretty much it. I think all these are kind of extra. Just kind of, yep, that's it actually. Just looking at the mountains off in the distance. But that is, you know, kind of the steps that I went through on creating that. Very cool, very cool. If you want to know more about Wormhole Ascent, then unfortunately we'll have to direct you to this. It was really complicated to create a lot of this stuff, but unfortunately the only thing I have time for right now is to just kind of show you a lot of the things. Like for example, I went over spawn points, and it worked in this, so maybe I should follow these steps again and see if I missed anything. And for example, like here I go over how I made the hanging vines and things like that. And if you want to know in general the details of how I did it, again, it's able to be downloaded and looked through and picked apart, and you know, you can see everything that I have there. If you have any specific questions outside of that, then I encourage you to ask in the comments. But I do want to add one thing that I did for Wormhole Ascent that I thought was kind of cool and I haven't shown off yet. I had to add in a custom block because everything is covered in darkness, and I was using Fulbright for majority of making it, and then I was like, and then I realized I had to think of a solution because in survival mode you cannot have Fulbright on. See all the blocks here, if I go into the asset editor, they are all light blocks. So if I go here and I do the thing of, let's do Gizmo Cube, sure, and then I go into here, you can see that I am now inside of the light block, and pretty much everything is of the light block. And how I got this to work was, I think 3 things that I had to do. Well, for one, I had to set the light level that is emitted from it. Second thing, I had to go into, I think, let's see, where is it? Yes, it's actually all in behavior. In behavior, I had to create a new hitbox type and interaction type, which is empty, which is my own custom one. That is pretty much 0. This is not actually fully 0, it is 0.0001, because you can't actually put exactly 0. And so then through here, you can never really hit it. Maybe at some very specific angle, you'll be able to hit a light block, but in general, you will not be able to hit it. So yeah, it's actually kind of cool that I'm inside blocks right now, but I have collision, and I'm only colliding with with these blocks. I also had to, for the, of course, gathering of it, I had to make sure that it dropped nothing, unbreakable, and it's empty. So nothing dropped if you broke the block or if you place something inside the block. This is also important. Allow break replace. This is the same mechanic that leaves have and grass. To where if you're placing a block on top of, if you're placing a block and there's grass there, it replaces it with that block. And so then I did the same thing for the light block. So where if I place a block inside the light block, it's able to be placed. And it doesn't like prevent it from being placed. And so those are kind of the cool techniques, and maybe someone else can use it for some kind of weird world gen thing. It does create some unfortunate problems to where if you, like for example for, let's see, oh, I think I saw it. Yeah, so for example, some of the boom shrooms exploded, and now there's no light blocks here, so it's just like weirdly dark. But you can also do cool things like, for example, for the caves that I have for Winter Twist, which actually I can just go up here and look at. Oh, right, I don't have Winter Twist loading right now. But for Winter Twist, in general, all of this is light blocks except for like the caves on the outside, so I can do some like cool, like moody lighting there, but then whenever you go into the center, it is just a general lighting. But yeah, I did that. And so the next thing I want to go over is how I did the eroded natural terrain. What you may have been waiting here the whole time for. I'm sorry it's left to the end. It's just how the progression works in the video. So yeah, the mountains. I'm just gonna load the mountains. I'm not gonna go over everything else because I mean most of it isn't that, I don't think, relevant or interesting. Besides like the rivers, but the rivers are doing, you know, a branch node, and that's another whole thing to talk about. But here it is. It's a little bit messy because I was trying out multiple different techniques, but how it essentially works is, again, using that same method of the angle and the rotator nodes. This could be a lot simpler if I could just plug in, you know, just a density into the spin angle, and it wouldn't have had to be this complicated. I could have just done one through this, but it looks exactly like where is it? This is actually exactly how it looks. This is what's being applied to the mountains. It's just this technique. I'm using the density gradient to determine what angle the density is facing, and then I'm using the rotator node to rotate, you know, a density like this, which I do use. I tried two of them. One, I mean, worked, and it's very simple, which is just a 1D noise, which is why I do Z override, and then it's a 2D noise. And I cache this because it's a Z override, and I'm also using this, using this node a lot. Which this needs to be single instance. I didn't know that until now, and so it could actually go a lot faster. But yeah, this is one way to do it. Another way, which is shown in the video and how they do it, is using cell noise and then doing a curve mapper to where it's to where it has a dip in the center of the cell, and then each cell is then rotated. This works the same as the grooves. You know, it depends on what you're trying to go for, I guess. But yeah, so then, I mean, pretty much all the rest of it is very much fine-tuning a lot of stuff. This is the general simplex noise that I have here. If I just had this, then it would look like very basic terrain, but then this is then what's taken into all of this other stuff to then create all of those ridges into the mountainside. There is a little bit of stuff to consider here in the terms of whenever it gets flatter. So again, need to take another mountain base, but except the 3D one to get the steepness. If the steepness is nearing 0, then you don't want grooves, because then it'll look very weird, especially whenever there's like grooves on one side leading on to grooves on the other side. It'll create a mismatch, and the best thing to put at that mismatch is instead to put just the mountain base again, to where if it's like towards the peak, then it will push it upwards and you know, kind of make everything look more up, and then if it's towards the base, then it will kind of, you know, all be pushed more downwards. This is, again, I'll explain better in the video. This is just kind of my example of that, and then I did that whole technique again all through here. And actually I missed this. I didn't realize this until later, that one of the keys is actually disconnected. So you have one that is creating like kind of the bigger peaks and valleys, so like this one or like that one, but then these smaller ones here is just the same process applied again, and you can apply it again and again and again as much as you want to get as much detail, but I figured 2 is enough, especially with how big the node graph is getting. And again, I definitely want that special rotator node. But yeah, ultimately it became not as complicated as I thought, and I was able to do this within like 2 days after watching that video, which is just crazy to me. I mean the mountains look like really good to have just this simple of a technique. And again, this can be very much compacted with a lot of that. It does require, again, a lot of like modifying values. You can see I have very specific things here, and to make it all work well. And then I also did I actually just imported the same mountain materials that I did with the other one, to where it's like lighter material on this side, darker material on the other side, and then, you know, the mountain tops are mainly snow. Anywho, that is everything. This has been a very long video for me to record. My throat is very sore. I'm gonna be resting it later, but I've gotten everything I want to. Hopefully this has been a very nice update to World Generation. I hope this has hopefully taught you something new. If it hasn't, then you can yell at me in the comments to make another video. And I hope to see, I mean, all of your World Gen stuff very, very soon. I mean, this has just been so much fun, and you know, I hope that, you know, everyone's always learning from this. I mean, at least I am, and I want to share that knowledge with others. So yeah, I'll just leave you with this cheeseburger that someone's made as a request. You know, another inspiration thing. You can just, You know, ask your friends, hey, what do you want me to create? And you know what? Maybe they'll suggest a cheeseburger. And maybe that's what I'll leave you off on. Alright, I will see you all in the next video.